believe we are ready to proceed with the evidence in this case. Mr. Sheffield.
Hey, good morning. We've had a chance to speak briefly before, haven't we? Okay, I'm Jason Sheffield. I represent Travis McMichael. So I wanted to go back just a little bit and understand how you were gathering information to then make the decisions that you made over the course of taking photographs and working the crime scene on that day. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, great. May I approach witness? Yes. I'm going to show you what I've marked as defendants exhibits 10 and 11. Ask you if you recognize these.
Yes.
Okay, what are those?
These are my crime scene sketches.
Okay, is that something that you do in every crime scene case when you show up and are taking a look at where evidence may be that needs to be collected?
Not in every one, no.
Okay, you did crime scene sketches in this case? Is that
Yeah,
correct?
our department has it where anything to do with homicides is mandatory sketches. If there's injury, we'll do sketches, and anything natural deaths.
Okay, are these fair and accurate copies of your actual crime scene sketches in this case?
Yes.
Okay, move into evidence, defense exhibit 10 and 11.
No, okay.
Permission to publish?
Go ahead. Whatever's sitting, yeah, I assume those were just the crime scene photographs that already been admitted.
I'm working with these, yes, Judge.
Okay, the only reason I asked, just so everybody's aware, if you put them down on the table,
Too
that
close.
document camera is going to pick it up. So
Okay.
let's just be
I'm going
aware
to
of
publish
that.
to the jury.
I'm sorry, I believe I said admitted. Go ahead.
You did, yes.
Okay.
May I publish? I publish to the jury. Yes. Louder. I need to be louder. Okay. I will do that. Okay. I'm showing defendant's exhibit 10. This is one of the crime scene sketches that we were just talking about. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And very basically, it shows the deceased body in the roadway,
That's correct.
as well as the streets of Satilla and Holmes, right?
That's correct.
And then you've got a number of things numbered that you've collected, shotgun shells.
Hold on a second. You got to make it a little bit bigger. They can't see it.
It's hard to see it.
There's a zoom button on there.
Yeah.
To the right?
I see it.
The jury's telling you the button's on the bottom left.
I see the zoom button right here, but I've gone too far. And what was in the way, this thing? You are. Okay. And I'm in the way. All right. So just very, very briefly, I'll move out of the way. What we're talking about here is essentially just the drawing that you've done, right?
That's correct.
Okay, and you do this to get an idea of and to create a memory of where everything is located.
That's correct.
In addition to marking where things are located, you also identify these things by numbers.
That's correct.
Okay, and you also do some measurements.
That's correct.
Okay, and so if we move to this side, here we can see what you listed out of the objects that you may have collected, right?
Correct.
Okay, and we've just admitted some of those into evidence.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Now I'm going to show defense exhibit 11. It's a little zoomed in. There's 11. And you've mentioned a pole. What is that pole you're talking about?
So in the pictures where I'm facing Satilla Drive, you'll see a pole. That's what I'm referring to.
And the pole was located on somebody's property?
That's correct.
And then you're measuring distances from that pole to the various objects?
Correct.
Okay, just to get an idea of where everything is in relation to each other.
Correct.
Fair, okay. And then I move this up a little bit. You see down here at the bottom, there are other distances that you've written down here with these types of numbers, right arm, left arm, those types of things.
Correct.
Just to understand the body's position in the roadway.
So the measurements are based off of a triangulation measurement.
Okay?
So what we do is we take a foot. So your left foot would go from, let's say, the pole, and you'd measure that, and then you take another object and you measure that left foot to that to get your exact point.
Got it. You're just trying to be precise about where everything is.
That's correct.
It's to make sure that there's a complete record of what you're observing on that day in addition to photographs.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Thank you. When you first got out there on the scene that day, did anyone make you aware that there was a video that captured some of the interaction between Mr. Arbery and Travis McMichael?
They did not.
So you did not have the benefit of that video to try to figure out what had happened before your arrival?
I did not.
Okay. Did you speak with other officers about what the path of travel was in terms of where Mr. Arbery may have run that day?
I did not.
Okay, so you were not aware when you were out there that he was running from 220 Satilla Drive and up Satilla Road?
I was not.
Okay. To be sure, you were not aware that he ran up Burford Road.
Objection to facts not in evidence.
I'm asking if he was aware of it. There's no.
It's a big if, you know, we're still working through the facts in the case, so.
That's fine, yeah.
Well, but
She-
we got the opening, so, yeah, where are we going?
I think that what we're doing here, Your Honor, is we're making sure that she is or is not aware of certain facts. She can testify that she was or wasn't aware of those things. I'm not testifying, I'm asking her.
Just whether she was,
Yeah.
what she was familiar with at the time she was arriving on scene.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Did you have any information that Mr. Arbery ran up Burford Road?
No.
Okay. Or that he ran further, what I'll characterize as up Holmes towards Zellwood?
No.
Okay. So then if I have a map here of the neighborhood. Have you seen a map like this before?
I have.
Does this look familiar like a map of Satilla Shores neighborhood?
Yes.
Okay. I think I'll just show it to the state. Just to help demonstrate your testimony, I want to make sure that we're on the same page. And I'll try to hold it so everybody can kind of see it here. So if I put it up here, is that okay, Your Honor? All right. So you recognize this intersection right here as Holmes Road, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So what we're talking about is Burford continues all the way up here and then kind of comes around to Zellwood, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then we have 220 Satilla, which is over here, kind of right around where Jones intersects Satilla. Do you see that?
I do. Yes.
Okay. So is it fair to say that you did not take any photographs of anything up here on Satilla Drive?
Except for 232 Satilla Drive.
Except for 232 where that stray buck shot went.
Correct.
Okay. And it's fair to say you didn't take any photographs coming up Burford?
I did not.
Okay. And then what I was just asking you about Holmes, Mr. Arbery's body was sort of down here toward the end, what I'll call the end of Holmes where it intersects with Satilla, correct?
That's correct.
But you did not take any photographs up in here
I did not.
or back here on Zellwood?
That's correct.
Okay. I just want to establish whether you did or you didn't. You were asked about whether or not Mr. Arbery had anything in his pockets. You recall that?
I do.
Okay. And what you're saying is when the clothes were collected, that nothing was contained in the pockets at that time.
Correct.
Okay, but we've just talked about an extensive amount of roadway, Satilla Drive from 220 Satilla, up through Burford, and then up and down Holmes Road, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Did you or any officer canvass Satilla Drive in any way to determine whether or not there was anything that could have belonged to Mr. Arbery?
Not that I was directed to do so.
Not that you were directed to do so, okay. So
Correct.
you did not canvass Satilla in any way to look for any belongings of Mr. Arbery's.
Correct.
Similarly, you did not canvass Burford Road to look for any belongings of Mr. Arbery. That could have been
Correct.
attributed to Mr. Arbery.
Correct.
Or similarly, up Holmes Road.
Correct.
Okay. We were looking already at State's Exhibit 46. And in State's Exhibit 46, I think you've identified this as the corner of where Holmes Road comes and meets here with Satilla Drive. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so essentially the house that we see in this Exhibit 46 is the house right here on the corner. That would be 235.
Correct.
You were saying 235 when I was saying 235.
Right, yes.
Okay. And as we look at this picture, and based on your memory, isn't it true that there are no fences that line this property that would obstruct anybody from passing through the yard.
That's correct.
Okay. Do you recall looking at 301 on this side of the yard and also seeing that there were no fences that were obstructing any part of the yard?
Yes.
Did you go further back up homes to determine whether or not there were any fences in these yards that would obstruct anybody from crossing through?
No.
Okay. There are none, is that correct?
I'm not sure.
Oh, very good. One of the things that we were talking about is measuring distances. And so one of the questions that I have for you is the distance here well, we have a photograph with the truck. Let me find that. Here's our truck. Let me see if I can get a better master shot of that. There we go. I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 54. Were you aware that there was a confrontation between Mr. Arbery and Mr. McMichael in front of his truck?
No.
You were not aware of that?
No.
Ah. Were you asked at all to get a measurement? Let's say this is the front of Mr. McMichael's truck as it's facing this way, and the road is here, and then the driveway is here, where you are essentially, and the grass. Were you asked to get any measurements from the front of the truck back across to the driveway where some of the blood splatter was found, or some of the blood was found?
No.
To try to understand that distance at all?
The truck never was brought to my attention.
Okay. The clothing that you collected from, and you collected the clothing, is that correct?
The clothing from who?
From Mr. Arbery?
No.
You did not. That was done later back at the crime lab.
Correct.
Okay. But you photographed Mr. Arbery's body, and there, I think, in that photograph we see some cargo shorts, is that correct?
That's correct.
A long belt,
Correct.
a bandana around his neck,
Correct.
no socks,
Correct.
just sneakers.
Correct.
Okay. One of the things that you did also is to collect fingerprints from Mr. Arbery.
Correct.
So that those fingerprints that you took from his actual hands could be compared possibly to what we call latent prints that may be on an object. Is that correct? Am I using that term right?
So we took prints to put in our system to make identification. There was no comparisons done because there was no latent prints to compare them to.
So latent prints meaning if I touch an object with my finger, I could leave a fingerprint on that
You could
object.
leave a latent, yes.
And that would be called a latent fingerprint.
Correct.
Okay, then we have the actual fingerprints taken off the person,
Correct.
which we then can compare to these unknown latent prints.
I guess I don't. When we take prints, we submit them through our APHA system for identification.
Okay.
So I'm not really sure. There was nothing to compare the prints to.
Okay, so what you're saying is no one, when you were out there, at least on that day, discussed with you that there were objects that needed to be fingerprinted for latent prints. Is that
No.
fair?
The only object that took any kind of consideration was the shotgun at the time, due to the fact that it had blood. So that would have had to go to the lab to have a serologist at least look at it to see how we can maintain the blood and the fingerprints.
And did that happen?
I'm not sure.
Okay, but a shotgun is something that you can get fingerprints off of, correct?
Correct.
The metal part of the gun, you could lift fingerprints off of that.
Correct.
The wooden parts of the gun, the handle, the stock, all those things, you could lift fingerprints off those if you were to try to do it.
Yes, correct.
Okay, but you were not part of any team that went to inspect or try to lift off latent prints from the shotgun.
No,
Okay. What about Mr. Bryan's truck? Were you informed on that day that there might be latent fingerprints on Mr. Bryan's truck?
no.
Okay. So you have nothing to do with that if that was done later?
So I obtained prints from Lieutenant Brandon Gregory. It was a palm print.
Okay.
That he said he obtained from a truck.
Okay.
What truck, I'm not sure,
What truck or-
but those are what I obtained from whoever processed the truck.
All right, so later in this process of this case, you were given a latent palm print to then put into evidence or deliver to be analyzed. Is that
Correct.
correct? Okay, all right, very good. I think you've also testified that the firearm that you collected had an empty shell in the chamber, meaning a spent shell that was in the chamber.
That's correct.
Okay, it had not been ejected out of the chamber and a new round loaded.
Correct.
Okay. Are you familiar with the dynamics of how that shell would be ejected out?
I am.
It would only be ejected out if the person with the gun re-racked it again to put a new live round in.
That's correct.
Okay. One of the things that you did, though, and we heard a little bit about it, is that you did a neighborhood canvass.
That's correct.
And the neighborhood canvass that you did was and did involve 3 streets in the neighborhood.
Correct.
You recall it involved Burford. And do you recall, as you're sitting here, the number of houses that you went to on Burford?
I don't recall the exact number. I went to
Okay.
quite a few.
Quite a few.
Yes.
And the reason that you do this is because you want to try to find anybody who knows anything about what may have happened on the 23rd. Is that
It's
correct?
to help locate witnesses.
Right. And witnesses doesn't necessarily mean a person who saw the actual shooting. A witness could be anybody with knowledge that's relevant to your investigation.
That's correct.
Okay. Witnesses to the potential relationship between the 2 men involved in the conflict.
Correct.
Witnesses that might understand who Mr. Arbery is or what he's doing in the neighborhood.
Correct.
Okay. Witnesses that might know Travis McMichael.
Correct.
Witnesses that may know about the history of break-ins or burglaries or thefts in the neighborhood.
Correct.
Okay, so you went knocking on doors with another investigator.
I did.
That was investigator who?
Heather Savage.
Investigator Savage. So the 2 of you, if my records are correct, on Burford, you went to 300, I'm going to list them out, okay? 300, 302, 305, 310, 314, 316, 318, and 322. Does that sound right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so just in looking at our map again, essentially, you started here at the beginning of Burford, and you went all the way up the street looking for information.
Correct.
Okay. Anybody that didn't answer the door, you left a card, and perhaps you would get a phone call back.
Correct.
And then whoever identified themselves as someone with knowledge, you would then pass that person's name over to another investigator who would follow up.
Investigator Lowry, who's the case agent, would have.
Lowry, we're going to call him the head case agent, is that
Correct.
right?
That's correct.
That's where everything comes up to him and he makes the calls about what to do.
That's correct.
All right. Only one of those in every case, is that fair?
About 2 if possible.
2 if possible,
Yes.
okay. And Investigator Marcy was another investigator that took a lot of responsibility in this case as well.
I'm not aware.
Okay. Now, you also went up Holmes, the street where the shooting took place, and you went to 404, 405, 416, 418, and 419. Is that right?
That's correct.
So if we're looking at Holmes here, this is our street here on Holmes,
Mm-hmm.
you went pretty much all the way up and down Holmes looking for information.
Correct.
Okay. And then lastly, you also were looking at residents on Satilla, and this would carry from 221, 235, 239, and then 225 through 229. So essentially, again, you're coming in this area here looking for anybody that knows anything.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Now, by the time that you arrived on the scene, Travis McMichael was not there any longer, right?
Not that I'll say no, but I wasn't paying attention to who was involved.
Okay.
So
You were not asked to photograph him on the scene,
No,
or to talk with him on the scene,
no,
or to take fingerprints from him on the scene.
no.
Okay. And then I think later that day, you actually saw him back at headquarters.
Who?
Travis McMichael.
Yes.
Yeah, you had a very brief interaction with him there at and I believe you noticed that he was in a distraught state.
Yes.
And I think you even asked him, "Are you okay?" And he said no.
Yes.
Okay. Now, the next day, you went back to the neighborhood, and this was, we were talking about doing some of this neighborhood canvas.
Correct.
Is that right? And as you were walking through the neighborhood and coming up Satilla, you came across Mr. McMichael, Travis McMichael.
Correct.
Now, he lives, in terms of your canvas, he lives right here at 230.
Correct.
Is that correct? So 230 is in the heart of the houses that you're knocking on the doors, right?
Correct.
Okay. And again, when you saw Mr. McMichael that day, he was outside in his yard.
Correct.
Again, he was distraught.
Correct.
He was upset, right?
Correct.
Trying to figure it all out.
Correct.
That's what he said to you. "I'm just trying to figure this all out."
Correct.
Give me 1 second, please.
We were making sure, I just want to make sure. The two of you that are in the gallery, the large board, I saw there was some, you saw
We were
it.
talking about
Yep,
that.
they saw it.
You see it, okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, nothing further, Your Honor, thank you.
Thank you.
No questions.
Mr. Goff.
A few.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
My name is Kevin Goff. I represent Mr. Bryan, and I just have a few more questions for you, if that's
No
okay. I think you indicated you did a canvass of the neighborhood,
Correct.
and one of the reasons you did that was to locate surveillance videos, if there were any, that might have captured this incident.
Correct.
All right. Did you miss Roddy Bryan's house?
I don't know where he lives.
Okay. Did you? But your practice was to leave business cards.
Correct.
All right. Did you ever recover any surveillance videos from Mr. Bryan?
There were a few residents that had them that were not able to obtain them, which we sent another investigator to locate or to obtain those videos if possible.
So how did the Glenn County Police Department recover the night owl videos?
I'm not sure. That
Did you
was-
recover the night owl videos?
No.
No further questions.
Any redirect?
Investigator Ramos, when you were out on scene, we saw in one of those pictures a truck driving away.
Correct.
Okay. Were you aware that there was a second truck on scene earlier that day?
No.
About how long after the incident did you arrive on scene, do you know, roughly?
Maybe about an hour. I'm not sure what time the call came out. I arrived around 2:15. I want to say I estimated about an hour.
So if those trucks contained any sort of evidence, inside or outside, you didn't have a chance to document or collect any of that on scene that day?
Objection, Your Honor, that's leading.
Did you have an opportunity?
That's sustained. Just rephrase it, please.
did you have an opportunity to collect any evidence or photograph anything from the trucks that day?
No.
Just 1 second.
Investigator Ramos, when you sent that box, or when you put the information or evidence collected from the shotgun and the ballistics, the 4 unfired and the 1 fired shot, you put that into the box and sealed it up, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And Judge, for the record, when we had said what was inside the box, it was test fires and the shotgun. Ballistics were done later on, and those will be tendered later. The 4 unfired and the 1 fired will be tendered later. Do whatever with
Let's
it.
clarify.
Object to testifying right now.
Yeah, let's,
Take
off the record.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, we can
Okay.
go ahead and address that.
You put those inside the box and sent them off, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Can I clarify
Sure.
something? So when we packaged it, it got turned over to the GBI. So I can't say that I sent them off. I don't know what happened after the custody was turned over to the GBI.
Okay. No further questions, Judge.
Anything on that limited issue from the defense?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you.
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you. You can sit down.